John dreamt of composing a symphony, a masterpiece to echo through eternity. His cramped apartment, filled with sheet music and the ghosts of unfinished melodies, held his ambition captive. Day after day he toiled, his meager earnings barely covering rent, let alone piano tuning. John yearned for recognition, for the world to hear his music. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Rejection letters piled up like silent rejections of his very soul. He felt like a caged bird, his symphony trapped within. One evening, despair threatened to consume him. He slammed his piano shut, the discordant sound mirroring the chaos in his heart. Just as he was about to abandon his dreams, a knock echoed through the room. Intrigued and desperate, John invited the stranger in. The man introduced himself as Mr. Smith, a patron of the arts with connections. John's heart pounded in his chest. This was his chance. Mr. Smith offered him a contract, a chance for his symphony to be performed at a prestigious music festival. The catch? John had to make a few minor changes to his composition, adjustments to make it more palatable for a wider audience. John hesitated. These changes felt like betrayals of his artistic integrity. But Mr. Smith was persuasive, assuring him it was common practice, a small compromise for monumental exposure. He reminded John of his dream, the dream that seemed so far out of reach. The weight of his ambition pressed down on him, suffocating his doubts. He looked at the contract, the words blurring under his gaze. With trembling hands, he signed it. As the festival neared, John found himself making more and more minor changes. His symphony, once a reflection of his soul, now felt like a cheap imitation, a hollow shell of its former glory. He tried to voice his concerns, but Mr. Smith was always one step ahead, manipulating him with praise and promises. John was trapped in a gilded cage of his own making. His nights were plagued by nightmares. He dreamt of his symphony as a twisted, grotesque version of its original self. He saw the disappointed faces of his idols, their judging eyes burning into his soul. Guilt gnawed at him, a constant reminder of the price of his ambition. He was living his dream, but at what cost? Section 4. Crossing the Line. The night of the festival arrived, a whirlwind of flashing lights and hushed whispers. As John took the stage, the applause deafening, a wave of nausea washed over him. He could barely recognize the music the orchestra began to play. It was a Frankenstein's monster of his creation, stitched together with compromise and deceit. He saw Mr. Smith in the audience, a smug look on his face. The sight fueled John's anger. He wanted to scream, to rip the conductor's baton and expose the truth, but he was frozen in place, the weight of his ambition a crushing force. He had come too far to turn back now. So he conducted. He conducted like a man possessed, pouring all his rage and regret into the performance. The audience, oblivious to the turmoil within him, erupted in thunderous applause. Section 5. The Bitter Taste of Victory. John's symphony was a resounding success. Praise showered down on him like confetti. He was hailed as a genius, a prodigy. But the accolades rang hollow in his ears. Every clap felt like a slap, a cruel reminder of his betrayal. He had achieved his dream, but the joy he once imagined was replaced by a gnawing emptiness. He tried to find solace in the recognition, to convince himself that the end justified the means. But the faces of his idols, twisted in disappointment in his dreams, haunted his waking hours. He was surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. The price of his ambition, he realized, was his soul. Section 6. A Crushing Realization. One morning, John woke up to find his apartment filled with newspapers proclaiming his triumph. And there, on the front page, was a picture of him, conducting his symphony. But it wasn't him. The face staring back, though bearing his features, held a chilling emptiness. He looked closer, his blood turning to ice. The reflection in the eyes of the man in the picture, those weren't his eyes. They were Mr. Smith's. In that moment, the crushing weight of his choices suffocated him. He had sacrificed his integrity, his very identity, at the altar of ambition. He had become a hollow shell, a puppet dancing to the tune of his own compromised dreams. The symphony, once his pride and joy, now mocked him, a constant reminder of the devil's bargain he had made. He was left with nothing but the chilling realization: some dreams, some ambitions, are best left unrealized.